Cuphead quickly became one of the most popular games ever. For a while, everybody was playing it. And now, with the long-awaited DLC, The Delicious Last Course, the hype is back. And today, we finally decided to break down these characters from the game to see who's the best and who's the worst. I'm Kyle with 1UP Binge, and this is Cuphead Characters Good to Evil. One major note before we continue, we're only going to be accounting for events and personalities that we see in the game. Despite the many books, cartoons, and fan theories, we want to stick to in-game material. But we did cover the Cuphead show in a Good to Evil a while back over on Wicked Binge, so feel free to check that one out as well. And finally, spoiler warning for The Delicious Last Course. With the warnings out of the way, as usual, we'll be starting with the most noble and heroic character and working our way down. These characters are the Good. Earning our gold medal of Good is Legendary Chalice / Miss Chalice. She's a character we've talked about extensively, but she is vastly different in the game from her personality in the show. She appears throughout the initial game as a damsel in distress that needs to be saved. She ends up giving Cuphead and Mugman the super arts that they can use. However, she ends up being able to join the world of the living again with Saltbaker's astral cookie. And sure, she ends up tricking Mugman to switch places, but she knows that they won't permanently switch. One could say she got too blinded by the possibility of coming back to see Saltbaker's trickery, but most people were tricked, so we really can't blame her. And she doesn't do anything bad during her time in the game. In fact, she's much more helpful than our next entrant. Speaking of which, taking the silver medal of Good is Elder Kettle. Kettle is an interesting case simply because of his role in the game. He is the adopted father of Cuphead and Mugman, and someone who makes consistent appearances throughout the base game. He's responsible for penning the tutorial that the boys are able to use, and is also responsible for them obtaining the pea shooter. Kettle's role is simply to help the boys along, and he clearly fulfills that role, but only takes the silver medal due to his lack of screen time. Our bronze medal of Good go to none other than Cuphead and Mugman. Cuphead and Mugman are the main characters of the game, and as such are often seen as very good people. And for good reason. While they do lose their souls to the devil, it was due to gambling, which we really can't blame them for entirely, as gambling is heavily addicting, and they were on a roll. They immediately want to get out of this, which makes sense considering that they're implied to be young teens. They do start hunting down the debtors who obviously aren't very happy with having their debts collected on. That said, by the end of the game, the canon ending includes Cuphead and Mugman destroying the contracts, freeing them all. In the DLC, they try to help Chalice obtain a real body, so she could be happy, showing that they will happily help their friends. Small but important, up next is Canteen Hughes. Hughes is a living canteen creature who appears throughout the first two Inkwell Isles, as well as Inkwell Isle 4. He is the one responsible for creating the plane and giving it to Cuphead, Mugman, and eventually Miss Chalice. Later on, he also upgrades the planes with bombs, so that you can deal with bigger threats. In the DLC, he ends up helping the Cups during Dog-on Dogfight, where they fight while riding on his plane. Hughes is a very helpful individual, so he definitely earns a spot here. Similar in scope and size, King of Games is up next. Appearing initially in the DLC, King of Games runs the King's Leap, a series of games utilizing his kingdom and its people, in which you have to win via use of the parry. He seems like an overall nice guy, and all the people of his kingdom seem to enjoy facing off against the Cups. That said, it is implied that he may hate his wife, as he gives you extra coins for beating her, but that could simply be because she is the last boss that you face. Moving on to Porkrind. Another NPC who doesn't really have a lot to talk about, but is still important enough to land on our list. Porkrind runs the local Emporium, a place where Cuphead and company can obtain powerful weapons and charms. Porkrind is a shrewd businessman and doesn't really like his time wasted, but he never kicks Cuphead and friends out of the Emporium. In fact, he seems downright chummy with the Cups, as he's one of the only characters who physically speaks, and he says both hello and goodbye to them. But then again, that could just be good customer service. The first real boss on our list, Grim Matchstick, ranks next. Grim is a giant dragon you face during the level Fiery Frolic. Now, despite people hating the boss for its gameplay, Grim is by far the nicest boss that we find. During all three of his phases, it becomes obvious he doesn't want to fight or kill the Cup siblings. In his first phase, he seems to just want to play with the Cups, despite them looking to collect his soul. He apologizes to the Cups in a non-sarcastic and non-patronizing way during his second phase death quote. and even in his third phase, he is begging the Cups to leave the fight. Grim is just a sweet old dragon who doesn't want to fight if he can help it, hence his ranking. The fearsome four known as the Root Pack ranks next. These four are the very first bosses that Cuphead and company face off against in the game, in the mission Botanic Panic. While it's not explicitly stated how these four are to each other, they seem to be quite protective and willing to defend one another. This is prevalent in the secret phase of the fight, where if you don't attack Ollie Bulb the Onion, Horace Radish will come out and attack you alongside Chauncey, showing a heavily protective side to the group. While in the Cuphead show they seem abusive and willing to trick people to get what they want, these versions of the characters seem happy to just be left alone. Sure, Sal and Chauncey both seem more than happy to slay the Cups, but Ollie actively apologizes and wishes the Cups not to cry like he does. Our first boss from the DLC, Esther Winchester, ranks next. Esther is the guardian of the desert limes that Cuphead and friends need to get to make the Wonder Tart. She is the sheriff of her little desert town area and seems to protect it with everything she has, as evidenced by her death quotes where she's mostly just trying to get the Cups to leave. Her first phase defeat quotes implies that she's willing to help the Cups to a degree by putting out last call for alcohol. Her fourth phase defeat quote also says that she's more annoyed with the Cups than anything, wanting to enjoy herself instead of dealing with them. Sure, her second and third phases implies that she's more than happy to be fighting the boys, and even calling herself their worst nightmare. But despite all this, she seems to have a good heart, and is more than happy to accept help from the reformed Saltbaker in the epilogue. Also coming from the DLC, the King's Leap ranks next. The King's Leap is a group of characters based on chess pieces, all of which seem to be employed by or otherwise ruled by the King of Games. Now, each of these fights seem to be under the pretense of something similar to a gladiatorial battle, mostly for entertainment and not for anything else. Everyone is implied to survive these games, and they're treated differently by both the announcer and the game. Each of the pieces seem to take their job quite seriously, and it's implied that the Rook may have killed a lot of people. But because of his status as an executioner for the king, we really can't blame him for it. Next we have Wally Warbles. Wally is a large bird you face off against in aviary action. He lives inside a giant birdhouse / cuckoo clock alongside his son Willie. Wally is heavily protective and is unwilling to allow his son to be hurt, and will even fight while on his deathbed to protect his son and his family. Wally's actually quite a good guy, if boastful, because although he faces off against the Cups in a somewhat evil manner, it's clear that he's just being protective. Rounding out our good section is Raging Starlet Sally Stageplay. Sally is kind of an interesting case because she's sort of inconsistent, because she and her husband seem quite competent and caring with each other for the most part, such as sincerely mourning her husband if he dies from the start of the secret phase. Sally does seem to sincerely care about her audience as well, as she's willing to do a lot for them, especially during her standing ovation. That said, she does seem very self-centered regarding her time on the stage, and doesn't really like the Cups all too much. She threatens them in her Phase 1 death quote, tries to get them to leave in Phase 3, and gives them advice regarding leaving during the standing ovation in Phase 4. She even gives similar advice to learn in Phase 2, showing that despite her anger and threats in Phase 1, she is more than willing to let the Cups leave, which just solidifies her place in the good section. But with the good guys wrapped up, it's now time to move into more neutral territory. These characters fall in the gray area. Starting off this section is none other than internet darling Calla Maria. Calla, like the other main game bosses, gambled away her soul to the devil, and as such is hunted down by Cuphead and Mugman. She is playful and well-meaning for the most part, and enjoys including her fishy friends in her exploits. She seems to be quite flirty and happy for the most part, as her Phase 1 death quote implies. However, she ranks in the gray area, because after being forcefully shifted into a mermaid Gorgon, she becomes angry and erratic, and willing to kill. But by the end of the game, it seems like she goes back to her normal and regular self. Moving on to Ribby and Croaks. Ribby and Croaks are a pair of fighting frogs you face in Clip-Joint Calamity. The two of them seem to be quite friendly with each other, and protect each other like brothers tend to do. According to their Phase 1 death quote, they've been fighters since they were quite young, and claim to be from the wrong side of the pad, implying a likely criminal history. They also seem more than happy and capable to kill the Cups. Genie Extraordinaire de Jimmy the Great ranks next. He's a powerful genie you face off against in Pyramid Peril. Djimmi is a trickster at heart and quite manipulative, and with his magic he is more than a threat. However, due to his general trickster demeanor, it means he can also be quite the good guy. This is shown most recently with a new part added in an update, Djimmi's Wishes. These wishes activate when you spin in place, and give you double HP until you win your next battle. This can only be done 3 times, and while the character giving you the items are the supposed game Djimmi, losing to his final phase reveals that it is indeed Djimmi's Wishes. The only truly secret boss we can think of, Angel and Demon, rank next. Now, to be completely fair, we don't know much about them, who they are, who they may be related to, or even really their personalities. What we do know is that Angel is exceedingly nice, and the Demon is exceedingly evil. The Angel refuses to hurt you, as all of his attacks are harmless. Meanwhile, the Demon attacks constantly, and the only way to stop them is by forcing the Angel to attack. The Angel even seems mortified if you're killed, and quite sad by the end, balancing both of these guys out in the gray area. Moving on to Goopy Lagrande. Goopy is a large slime monster who hops around and fights Cuphead and Mugman, and also one of the oldest bosses for the game. He seems to really enjoy fighting and hopping around, even getting angry that this activity has been interrupted. He also has no problems growing in size utilizing a jelly bean, although the implication is that the item is a steroid. And although confirmed alive, he doesn't appear in the ending, meaning he may not forgive the cups, but it is unclear. Moving on to Beppy the Clown. Beppy takes his role as a clown very seriously, being a prankster for the most part, continuously making puns. Beppy is all about his jokes and his carnival abilities, having fun more often than enjoying the fight. However, he can't be ranked any higher because in his final phase, he becomes downright sadistic and villainous. Jumping from the main game to the DLC, Glumstone the Giant ranks next on our list. Glumstone is a large giant who lives in the mountains, supposedly worshipped or at the very least friends with many gnomes who live around him. So much so that he's the keeper of the gnome berries. Glumstone is willing to let the gnomes mine in his mouth and live in his beard, and seems quite happy to let geese and bears and other animals live around him, even acting as a crossing guard for them. Now, he does try to eat and digest the cups, and even tells them to just give up while in his final phase, so he could finish them off. But Glumstone is nice to everybody else from the looks of it, even if he is a malicious monster to the cups. Next up, we have Dr. Kull's robots. Technically, we're ranking Kull and his robot together because they're treated as pretty much one and the same. Kull assumedly built his robot, maybe for gambling, and uses it to face off against the cups quite well. He programmed the robot to kill the cups as implied in his Phase 1 death quote, and in his Phase 3 quote, he is shown to be quite overconfident in his ability to beat the cups. They aren't a typical evil, but they are the first ones on this list to actively be trying to kill Cuphead and Mugman at the beginning of their fight. Now let's talk about the deranged sea captain, Captain Brineybeard. Brineybeard is a pirate who you face in Shootin' and Lootin', and he is just chock full of nautical nonsense. Brineybeard is obviously rough and tumble, happy to fight and loot to his heart's content. That said, he seems overall like a generally cheerful guy. He does talk down to the cups in his Phase 1 death quote, calling their skills a myth, but beyond that he seems relatively nice. The sad part is that despite his many phases, he only has the one death quote to work off of, and as such, we can't really rank him anywhere else. Jumping back to the DLC, the Howling Aces rank next. The Aces are a group of many dogs who work together, piloting planes, and a large dog that you face off against in dog-on-dog fight. Each of the dogs seem to be more than happy to protect the Pineapple Mint, and will do just about anything to beat the cups. The fighter pilot bulldog berates the cups upon beating them, saying that they didn't even have a sniff of a chance. The Saluki refers to the cups as fleabags, showing that she looks down on them quite heavily, and it can be implied to be a slur of some kind. The only people who we don't blame here are the Yankee Yippers, who seem to be just heavily trained and following orders. This group seems like a heavily trained unit who follows orders to a T. And rounding out our gray area is the frustrating flower Cagney Carnation. Cagney is a weird case because his personality, while very easy to understand, is very interesting. Firstly, he seems to delight in tricking his opponents with a cute facade before striking. He also gets extremely angry, enough to pass out in his KO animation. And he does consistently attempt to kill the Cups beyond anything we've seen on the list so far. He may also heavily enjoy doling out pain, and seems to enjoy the battle a bit too much, based on his grin. Cagney is a beast, and will take on anyone and anything in his path, especially since his soul is on the line. With the gray area wrapped up, we finally get to the dark side. These characters are the bad and the evil. Starting off the bad section is none other than Chef Saltbaker. The Saltbaker is a chef and baker you encounter on Inkwell Isle 4 in the DLC. Initially, he's a jolly fellow who seems content to help out the legendary Chalice in getting a physical body with his Wonder Tart. But as the game goes on, it becomes obvious that's not his goal. After obtaining all the ingredients, going back to the chef shows that the final ingredient he needs is an actual soul. He betrays your trust and tries to kill you, showing his truest colors. Despite the betrayal, he ranks just barely in the bad to evil section, simply because by the end of the game, he has not only tried to turn over a new leaf, but is forgiven by the DLC bosses, at least for the most part. So because of his heel face turn by the end, we'll be a bit forgiving on the chef. From the mission Threatening Zeppelin, up next is Hilda Burke. Hilda is energetic and mischievous, while also being immensely rude and annoying. She's also the type to literally shout you to death. She's sort of a lunatic and also looks down on the Cups, even more so than others. In her final phase, she ends up going off the deep end, preparing to kill any and everything that gets in her way, going absolutely insane, with maniacal laughter and all. Hilda is bad, but she is more of a nuisance than an actual evil character, hence her placement. Next we have the King's Court. This is the group of mini-bosses you face off during King Dice's fight, and all bets are off. One might assume this group are just following orders and not really all that bad, but each and every one seems to not only relish their position, but the fight they have. While the Tipsy Troop, Chips Bedigan, and Mr. Wheezy all seem semi-concerned with the Cups, most of the group is more than happy to slay them. Mr. Chimes, Mangosteen, Pip, and Dot all prepared to take the lives of the Cups for losing, and Mr. Chimes even claims he's ready to doom the Cups. Hocus Pocus makes fun of the Cups, claiming they've disappeared or ranked in last place. This wide array of options and styles makes it hard to pinpoint, but they do actively help people lose their souls to the devil, so we can't rank them any higher. Next is Phantom Express, another group of bosses. Phantom Express is a group of ghostly critters who live on a large train. This group is made up of 4 major parts, each of which are actively trying to kill Cuphead and Mugman. Unlike the others we talked about, who are trying to protect themselves and their souls, the Phantom Express is actively aiming to kill the Cups. In all of the phases, save for the final, they mention to ride the train you must be dead, and they're willing to help the Cups achieve that. It's not a stretch to say that this group absolutely ranks here, because of their malicious intent. From Marine Corps, Werner Werman ranks next. Werner is a cantankerous soldier who acts like a German soldier from World War I. He's a genius, able to create massively impressive items such as his tank, or the Katzenwagen. He doesn't know when to give up, still taking wild swings even when defeated. The real reason he ranks so low is Katzenwagen. While initially this giant cat creature may not seem like much, one of its attacks features the ghosts of 2 rats. While these could be holograms, there's no real way to tell, and based on the logic the game features, it's very likely that Katzenwagen, and by extension, Werner has killed at least 2 other rats, making him the first character to have a body count, and it was his own people. Queen of the Honeycomb, Rumor Honeybottoms ranks next. Rumor is the main boss you face during Honeycomb Herald, and is often regarded as one of the more annoying. Rumor is the queen of the beehive and shows very little regard for the workers and security she has in the fight. In fact, the whole first phase of the fight features you facing her security rather than herself. Sure, she's clever, but she still uses her powers to protect her honey rather than her soul, which shows that she does have some greater priorities. Very similar, like maybe too similar. Next up is Baroness Bonbon from Sugarland Shimmy. Bonbon is much like Rumor because she runs her kingdom and doesn't care for her people. Her entire moveset for the greatest part of the battle is literally her workforce fighting you instead. She only gets up to brawl during her final phase, and even then, her castle is the one doing most of the work. She sends her greatest warriors after her, and her laziness is exemplified because she only has 2 real attacks: shoot gun and throw head. Bonbon is definitely more evil because she cares even less than Rumor, hence her terrible placement. Right outside our bottom 3 is Mortimer Freeze. Mortimer may not look like much on the surface. In fact, he seems like a pretty chill old man. Pun intended. Mortimer is the keeper of the icy sugar cubes and is a cult leader. That is 110% the reason why he ranks this low on our list. He leads a cult, worshipping what we assume to be him and his power. He has access to a giant snow golem that he chains up and uses as an enforcer, and actively berates the Cups for not being good enough. Cults destroy lives whether you're a member or not. Your life is likely to be destroyed by the cult, hence why he has to rank so low. Taking the bronze medal of evil are the Moonshine Mob. The Moonshine Mob are our final DLC characters, and the most evil of that bunch. This is because, unlike the rest of this list, they're actually evil criminals and not just protecting their souls or what have you. This group protects the distillery dough, and while they do so, they also bootleg alcohol, as evidenced by their name. This leads to them breaking many laws, and since they're also a mob, they participate in gang violence, even kicking around their own members and letting them die just for fun. The mob actively despises the Cups and lets them be cannon fodder in their shootout with the police. Taking the silver medal of evil is King Dice. Dice is the devil's #1 lackey and someone who takes his job very seriously. Not only does he run the casino where we assume most of the souls are lost, he actively encourages the people to do so. He leads the King's Court, all of whom we assume to be helping in the casino, and he actively tries to kill the Cups when they ruin his chances of winning a bet. He is conniving, evil, and an actual criminal. If it wasn't for the fact that he's a lackey, he may have taken the gold medal. But to no one's surprise, the devil is the one who earns the gold medal of evil. The devil is the owner of the properly titled Devil's Casino, where he essentially tricks people out of their souls by making them become increasingly reckless over time. The devil is greedy and full of malice, holding hundreds of souls in his hands and enlisting the Cups as essentially bounty hunters and debt collectors, showing he won't do his own dirty work. He's also a deal maker, offering the Cups a chance to be his enforcers. And simply put, the devil is the most evil character in all of Cuphead, and it isn't even a contest. And with our morality spectrum complete, let's wrap things up by awarding some sinner medals. The Darwin medal goes to Goopy Lagrande. Despite the weak attacks, he literally died by being crushed with his own tombstone during a fight. The Gluttony medal goes to Glumstone the Giant. Going by everything that we've seen him swallow, his appetite seems to be endless. The Lust medal goes to Calamaria. She seduces and tricks sailors, resulting in shipwrecks around her. The Sloth medal goes to King Dice, because he relies mostly on his minions. The Wrath medal goes to the Devil for obvious reasons, as he's very much the most wrathful character throughout the game. He also earns the Pride medal because much of his actions are motivated by his ego. And finally, we're gonna give him the Greed medal as well, because his desire for souls never goes away. But let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking. And if you need a 1-up, make sure to hit that notification bell and binge our other Cuphead videos. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.